Welcome back to another episode of the GCN Tech Clinic, where I try and answer and solve your tech-related problems. So if you've got one, make sure you leave it for me down there in the comments section below, or alternatively, on all forms of social media using the hashtag AskGCNTech. Now, with no further ado, let's crack on. The first one this week, it comes in from Daniel Gunnarsson, who says, I want to have a little custom work done on my helmet. I have a matte black Specialized Prevail. What sort of paint is it safe for me to have my airbrush guy use? Thanks. Right, Daniel, just going to put on my health and safety hat here. Basically, I wouldn't advise doing it. The reason being, most helmets, so when it's actually the helmet's being painted, it's generally the plastic shell, which is then put onto the actual EPS foam. Now, those plastic shells are either screen printed or digi printed at the factory and use really safe inks to do so. The reason I wouldn't advise doing it is because if you get any overspray, quite often that spray paint actually contains solvents, and that can go onto the EPS foam and attack it, eat away at it. I have seen someone once upon a time add some super glue or something like that onto an EPS foam and basically just melted it away. And I don't know exactly what solvents are contained, all within different types of paint. I do know though that people out there do in fact customize helmets, but I just simply wouldn't advise doing it for that very reason of rendering a helmet useless. So really err on the safe side of caution, and don't stick anything on your helmet, don't paint it, don't do anything like that, because if you do so, a helmet manufacturer will just, well, void your warranty, I'm afraid. Next up, we've got a question from Dennis. Now, Dennis asks, for my indoor trainer, I need a specific tax skewer. Can I use that same tax skewer out on the road so I don't have to keep swapping them? Yes, Dennis, you can. Now, those skewers that are used inside of a turbo trainer are generally a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, and can withstand that clamping force from a turbo trainer or a home trainer. Now, the reason a lot of people might swap them over is because it doesn't match up with the front one, or maybe because it's slightly bigger and maybe heavier too, but it does the job absolutely fine whilst out on the road. And if anything, it is going to give you an even better amount of clamping force, because they do tend to just lock up just that little bit firmer. Now we've got a question from Robin, and Robin says, what cleaning products do pro teams use to keep their riders' kits clean and to prevent a funky smell from settling in? Right, Robin, great question. They use the same washing powder or product just like you or I do. So something which works at a very low temperature and removes stubborn stains, although I guess they do put them onto a hotter wash when they've really been riding through the wet weather. But generally, they're going to use just an off-the-shelf product. There are sport-specific products out there too, but one thing they don't generally do is use any fabric softener or conditioner, anything like that, because that tends to clog up the pores of the fabric, if you like, so it doesn't let you breathe or wick away the sweat quite as effectively. Something else to really consider is to actually wash your kit after every single ride. That way bacteria is not going to harvest, and if possible, even wash it by hand. That way that none of the delicate fabrics or synthetic pad inside of the shorts are going to get damaged inside of a washing machine when it gets spun round and round. Little fact here as well, when I looked inside of the team, well, what was Team Sky's vehicle last year at the Giro d'Italia, each rider had their own washing machine so that no bacteria was spread from one rider to another via the inserts of their shorts. Next up is Matt Fletcher. Now, Matt says, hi John, I got caught in a monsoon during a ride last week, and once back, after wringing out my kit and tipping the water out of my shoes, I got distracted and forgot to wipe down and liberally spray my drivetrain with WD-40. As a result, my chain ended up with lots of rust spots and a bit stiff in some of the links. Any tips on how to regenerate a neglected chain? Right, Matt, I would get myself a pad, something like Scotch Brite or a scouring pad, something like that. Hold it around the chain and just run it through. Generally, that's going to be enough just to actually dislodge any of those bits of rust. Now, say about the stiff links in there as well. Just try and actually bend that bit of chain around. Apply some chain lube on there, probably quite a bit, and then remove it, and then apply, or you probably won't have to, but possibly apply a little bit more if you've removed too much. That should do the job. Something else you could also try would be a wire brush too, just to give that chain a bit of a brush down really and try and remove those rust spots. But the first time you go out, after probably 2 or 3 kilometers, all of those rust spots will have just disappeared anyway. Next up, we've got Juan Pablo. Now, Juan Pablo says, I have a question. How to clean the brake surface of aluminium rims? It becomes black and ugly with the braking. Right, Juan, trick here is to use lots of elbow grease. But not just that, you're also going to need to use decent cleaner too, so you can get disc brake cleaner. That might do the job even on a rim brake surface, but really you want some hot soapy water. The hotter, generally the better. It tends to wear away that brake residue from the rims a little bit easier. But yeah, really you want to make sure you scrub nice and hard on there too. I do know people who've used the aforementioned Scotch-Brite or scouring pads, things like that, to try and wear away, that ingrained brake dust. The problem with that is that it can wear away any anodizing on the rims too, and also damage the sidewalls of a tyre. So really, it does require a little bit of extra effort, but it's certainly worth it in the long run just to use a standard sponge. But something else you could try as too is an old toothbrush of all things, because that can really get in any nooks and crannies effectively. Next up is Sinkmaster 667. Hey John, keep up the great work. I'm on the edge of buying myself a set of Prime Black Edition 85 rim brake wheels, but I'm worried about the lifespan of the braking track. What is the usual lifespan for carbon wheels? Right, as long as you use the correct brake pads, you're going to get good life out of them. I've had a pair of carbon wheels probably now going on 15 years or more, and the brake track on them is absolutely fine. The only thing I've had to do is change the odd spoke or two when they've broken, and also the bearings inside. Something though just to really consider here is that by using carbon wheels in really bad weather, really wet weather, you are going to risk wearing out the brake track just like you would on an aluminium rim there too. But generally they are going to last a pretty long time. Ian Fuchs is next, and Ian says, I recently noticed that my rear wheel on my road bike seems to be much closer to the non-drive side of the chainstay than the drive side. Nothing else seems out of alignment. The tyre appears to be centred in the caliper, and there's plenty of space at the seat stays. What is going on, and how do I get it straightened out? Thanks. This sounds odd. This sounds like the wheel is not dished correctly. So the dish of the wheel is essentially if you have the overlock nuts of the rear axle, for instance, in your case, where it actually butts up against the frame when you tighten it, they need to be an equal distance from the rim, so from the sidewalls of the rim. So it takes a special measuring tool called a dishing stick or a dishing tool to actually measure that effectively. And basically if you tighten up the spokes on one side, so every alternate spoke in most cases, that will bring the rim further over to that side. Sounds like that to me, but it's odd that it's still centered at the underneath the brake caliper and also at the seat stay. So possibly it's not that really. So one thing it could be, and the easiest thing to check, is make sure that wheel is in the dropout correctly. So have a good look. Never put your wheels in a bike upside down for a start, because that way the gravity doesn't tend to find the wheel doesn't tend to help the wheel into that dropout as effectively. As opposed to if you've got the bike up the correct way, the weight of the bike is a lot more than the weight of the wheel, let's face it, and then it can find its way on. If in doubt, with the wheel or the axle inside of that rear dropouts, just give it a good push down really on the saddle so the wheel does find its natural place, and then tighten it up. The number of people's bikes I look at, when I pull the back brake, something I always do, and I see they're lopsided, I always undo the skewer, just let that wheel drop into place and retighten the skewer, and everything's fine. So have a check of that first. If not, go down to your local bike shop and get them to check the dishing of that rear wheel. Now we've got one from Zeno Kaufman, who says, from a mountain biker, why do road bicycles still have 2 gears in the front? Right, so by this he's meaning a standard double chain set. 2 reasons: gear options and tradition. Now, firstly, road cyclists are hugely traditionist, and it takes a long time for us to actually embrace new technology, let's say, whereas mountain bikers, the sport isn't as old and they seem more willing really to adopt new things. Now, I said about gear options, I'm going to go back to that. So the reason being, road cyclists, obviously we ride on the road a lot more, and we like to be more in control, I guess, of our cadence, because we're not having things like tree roots and stones and stuff like that can really throw us out of the way with it. There's a more consistent approach, I guess, with our feel when it comes to riding a bike, and therefore we get probably slightly more fussy, I guess, with our cadence and our gear selection. We want it to be absolutely just right. So that's probably the main reason behind that. And really, you do tend to be able to get that with a 2x chain set, because you just don't have those big jumps that you would have with a wide range cassette. So if you've got a 1x setup, obviously you just have 10 or 11 or 12 speed at the rear, but you're always going to have a bigger jump somewhere in that combination. And the next one comes in from Chaos Twinduction, who says, why is there still a clicking sound every time I do one pedal stroke when I cycle, despite changing my bottom bracket and re-greasing my crank and pedals? Right, it could well be that one of your chainring bolts needs tightening up, or maybe one of the cranks too. Also, did you grease the spline of the crank when you refitted it? That maybe could be giving you a slight creaking sound. Something else to consider here is your seat clamp and also your rear skewer on there too, because sometimes you think it's coming from your pedal, for instance, but it may be coming from somewhere else. A way of identifying this is to pedal single-legged, so just with one leg while riding along. May look a little bit odd, but just bear with me, because that can often identify which side it's coming from. And also make sure you ride out of the saddle too to see if it's coming from that seat post or not. And the final question this week comes in from Paul, who says they have a torque wrench with a 1/4 inch drive for small jobs on the bike up to 24 Newton meters. But Paul's question is, can he buy an off-the-shelf 30 Newton meter to 200 Newton meter 1/2 inch drive, for instance, as the larger bike-specific torque wrenches are very expensive? I know 200 Newton meters will never be required. Yeah, you can, Paul. I've done exactly that. So I've got I think it's a 20 to 150 Newton meter, I think it's a 1/2 inch drive actually, just like you say, torque wrench. And I got that for that exact reason. I don't tend to use it very often. The only thing really we use it for on many bikes are threaded bottom bracket fitment, or maybe your pedals if you're using that with a little crow's foot adapter or something like that. But most torque settings on a bike are a lot less than sort of 30, what you're saying on there. But yeah, it could well be a good purchase. I use mine for other things, so working on my own car and others' cars as well. It's nice and handy, that. Now, this is one for you all actually out there. Mr. Grumpy53, a regular commenter, I'm sure you'll get involved in the comment section below. Whenever I finish using a torque wrench, I always unwind it so it doesn't have any tension or the spring or the ratchet inside of it. Is that a thing to do or not? I do it just for a peace of mind because I think it's not going to wear away or change the calibration or anything like that on the torque wrench. Let me know what you do. But yeah, Paul, your question, mate, absolutely fine to do that. Right, I hope that I've been able to help answer and solve your question this week in the Tech Clinic. Let me know though if you've got a question down there in the comment section below. I'm dying to get involved with them. Also, remember to subscribe to the channel and also click that little bell on the screen right now that gives you a notification each and every time we put a video live. And now for 2 more great videos, how about clicking just down here and just down here.